The chandelier went quiet first. 200 people. And somehow the room knew before I did. The toast had my name in it. The lead conservator, the Caldwell collection, a year of my work named in one careful sentence. I stood at the edge of the marble in a slate gray dress I had chosen so it would not compete, and for 3 seconds I was simply being thanked. Then her head turned. Copper hair, a chignon, a smile built for cameras. Mireille. Of course it was her gala. Of course it was. "Who let her in?" she said to the room. "Someone check the list. We don't usually do charity admissions." The room laughed. The floor went cold under me. Then the glass wall showed someone crossing the marble, and a voice I knew better than my own said 2 words.
Hi everyone! Thank you for staying with me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Stay close, stay connected.
If you want to hear uncensored, too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description. Tell us where you are watching from and subscribe. The chandelier had gone quiet, and the room had laughed, and I was standing on cold marble with my name still hanging in the air. I want to back up first. I want to say something before I tell you the rest, because if I don't tell it in the right order, it sounds like a fairy tale, and it wasn't. It was the opposite of a fairy tale. A fairy tale is a thing that happens to you. This was a thing I did, slowly, to myself, for 14 months. My name is Saurin Lennox. I was 26. I am a bookbinder and a manuscript conservator at the Hartley Vane Rare Books Institute, which means I spend my days mending 300-year-old spines, easing brittle pages flat, deciding which damage to repair and which damage to leave because the damage is part of the history. I'm very good at it. I am patient with old things in a way I was never taught to be patient with myself. There is a faint constellation of freckles across my cheek that I had powdered over since I was 15. I learned to cover the small map of myself the same way I learned to cover everything else. I was raised to be the easy one, the quiet one, the one who did not make a room turn. I learned that so well, it took me until 26 to notice I had been doing it on purpose. I should tell you about Mireille, since she's the one who asked the room who let me in. Mireille Devereaux had me first. 2.5 years before that night, she walked into a gallery opening and decided I was charming, and for 10 months, she carried me around the city like a good coat. My little restorer, she called me, to people whose names I never learned. I thought that was love. I had nothing to compare it to. She was bright and copper-haired, and she photographed beautifully, and I confused being displayed with being chosen. Then she left. I want to be precise about how, because the precision is the wound. She did not close a door. She left a voicemail. A week before my first heat, when I was at my most undefended, she left me 31 seconds saying I was a lovely girl. But not a strategy, not a strategy. I have turned that phrase in my hands the way I turn a damaged folio, looking for where the tear started. She had decided I was a thing that did not advance her, and so she set me down, the way you set down a coat in summer. Here's the part I have never said cleanly, so I'll say it now. I did not get cheated out of love. I gave it away by being too easy to leave. I had made myself so quiet, so undemanding, so grateful to be carried, that leaving me cost her nothing. That is not a thing she did to me. That is a thing I had built, and she simply walked out of it. For 2 years, she told the city she had let me down gently. She believed it. People do, I should tell you about the woman I go home to, except that's the whole story. So I'll only set the first stone of it here. 8 weeks after the voicemail, 8 weeks, I have counted them, a salvage firm hired the institute to conserve a private library pulled out of a failing estate. The principal of that firm asked for me by name. She had seen one spine I'd repaired, a single broken back I'd brought home, and she asked for the conservator who did it. I did not know yet what it meant, that she asked for the work and not the face. Mireille had only ever asked for the face. The principal wore a charcoal suit with the collar open one button and no tie, and a thin antique watch on her left wrist. And she did not fill a room so much as the room quietly rearranged itself around her, the way iron filings turn toward a thing they can feel and not see. On the first day, I apologized for something. a smudge of dust, an invisible nothing, the reflex of a woman trained to apologize for taking up space. She looked at the place I was pointing. There was nothing there. She said 2 words. I noticed. That was all. I noticed. Not, it's fine. Not, don't worry about it. She had noticed I apologized for nothing, and she said so, and she let it sit there until I understood she was not talking about the dust at all. We are bonded. We have been quietly married for 14 months. No one in that room knew it. And the reason no one knew it, the reason I was standing alone on that cold floor while 200 people laughed, was not her doing. It was mine. I had asked her to keep us a secret. I had asked, and she, whose entire nature is patience, had said yes and had waited. I'll get to why. But first you should know why I came to that gala at all, alone, in a slate gray dress I'd chosen precisely because it would not compete. The Caldwell family had donated the very collection I'd spent a year restoring. The Institute was being thanked at the toast, publicly, and I, the lead conservator, was required to be there to be named. 1 sentence of acknowledgement. I planned to stand at the back, hear my work credited, and leave before dessert. I did not tell Vesper which gala it was. I didn't want her to insist on coming and breaking the very privacy I had demanded. So I went by myself, in the dress meant to disappear in. And I did not learn whose engagement it was until I was already inside, under the glass, with the doors closed behind me. It was Mireille's. Of course it was. The chandelier had not lowered its light, but the room behaved as though it had. The quartet held a long note and let it die. Teo had stopped lowering his phone. It was up now, level with his chest, the little red eye of it open, and he did not seem to know whether to keep it there or put it away. I want to slow this part down because it happened slowly, not the way people mean when they say a thing happened in slow motion. It happened the way a spine opens when you have loosened the last thread and the boards finally fall apart in your hands, all at once, and then one piece at a time, and you see every layer that was holding it together. My name was still in the air, the lead conservator at Hartley Vane, a year on the Caldwell collection. The board member at the lectern had a kind voice and no idea what he had set down on the marble. He raised a hand toward me, the small public gesture that means, look, there she is, please be acknowledged, and the room turned the way a room turns when it is told where to look. That was when Mireille saw me. I watched it land. I had 2.5 years to imagine what it would look like when she saw me again, and I had been wrong about all of it. I had imagined coldness. I had imagined nothing at all. What I had not imagined was the half second before the performance, the bare instant when her camera smile had not yet arrived and her face was only a face, and in it was something that looked briefly like fear. Then the smile came. It always came. "Who let her in?" she said. She said it lightly. She said it to the room, the way you toss a line to people who are already on your side. Someone checked the list. We don't usually do charity admissions. The room laughed. I have repaired books that people threw away. Water ruined, mold blackened, spines cracked to powder. The work is patient, and it is humble, and no one applauds it. And I had built a whole self on the quiet dignity of being the one who saves the thing nobody thought worth saving. I tell you this because the laugh went through that self like water through old paper. It did not tear me. It dissolved me, very gently, at the edges. The floor went cold under me. I noticed the cold first, before the shame, which is strange, but I have learned not to argue with the order my body chooses to feel things in. My shoes on the marble through my shoes. The slate gray dress I had chosen so that I would not compete with anyone, chosen, I understand now, so that I could disappear if I needed to, was doing exactly what I had asked of it. It was making me into someone who could be asked who let her in. I straightened the place card on the table beside me. I did not decide to. My hand simply went and squared it to the edge, the way it squares everything. And I caught myself doing it and could not stop. A small alignment, a small order made in a room that had just told me I did not belong in it. Mireille was still talking. She had turned it into a story for the people near her, something about not knowing the Institute sent the help to mingle. And a woman in champagne silk laughed behind her hand. And Priya Caldwell, I knew her only from the photographs in the file, the heiress, the actual reason I had spent a year of my life on those spines, stood a step behind Mireille with a glass she was not drinking from and an expression I could not read. Someone near me said something I didn't catch. The board member at the lectern had stopped, uncertain, the thank you he had prepared now without a place to land. And then, into the small bad silence after the laugh, a voice that had not yet learned to perform said the truest thing anyone said all night. "That's not right." It was Teo, 19 years old, in a borrowed jacket that did not fit him, holding a phone he had been told to film the toast with for the Institute's account. He said it quietly. He said it the way you say a thing you cannot help saying. "That's not right." And he looked at me when he said it, not at Mireille, as if to make sure I had heard that at least one person in the room knew it. I want to tell you I drew myself up. I want to tell you I had a line ready. 2.5 years of lines. The perfect cold sentence I had rehearsed in the dark. I had none of it. I stood on the cold floor in the dress meant to vanish in, and I held a place card I had straightened, and I was, for that long moment, exactly the woman she had decided I was. The lovely girl, not a strategy. 3 feet from me, Adela Quist had her phone in her hand. I did not see what she sent. I learned later it was 3 words, and that she had sent them before the laugh had even finished, with the steel calm of a woman who had spent 50 years watching ruin things and deciding instantly and without sentiment which ones could still be saved. She did not look up at me. She touched the brooch at her collar, the small one shaped like a folded page, the one she touches before she does a hard thing. And she put the phone away, and she waited, and her face said she knew something the rest of the room did not. The far wall of the Aldous Vale is glass, black iron and old glass. 2 stories of it, the whole riverside of the ballroom, and at night, with the room lit behind you, it stops being a window and becomes a mirror. I had been half watching myself in it all evening, without meaning to. A gray woman at the edge of a gold room, the way you watch yourself in any dark glass, checking that you are still composed. So I saw it in the glass before I saw it in the room. A figure crossing the marble, far down at the river end, where the tall doors were. A shape had come through them and was moving across the floor toward the light, unhurried, and the glass showed it to me first. A tall, dark line of a person walking through my own reflection, walking through me, the way she had walked into my life the first time, by being asked for, and then simply arriving. I knew the walk before I knew anything else. There is a particular economy to the way she moves, no wasted motion. A person who has never once in her life had to hurry to be taken seriously. I turned around. The doors at the river end were open. Teo was standing by them. He had opened them, I found out later, because she had reached them and looked at him, and he had simply done it, the way the room does what she wants without being told. And through them came Vesper, a sharp charcoal suit, no tie, the collar open 1 button, black hair in a low, loose fall. She did not look at Mireille. I want that on the record, because it was the whole thing, really. She came through 200 people who had just laughed at her wife, and she did not give the woman who started it 1/2 second of her attention. She looked at me across all of that marble, and she came. The room felt her before it understood her. You could watch it move through the crowd in a wave, the turning of heads, the lowering of voices, the small instinctive rearrangement people make when something with actual weight enters a room. They did not know who she was. They knew only that the air had changed owner. Mireille's smile held a 1/2 second too long. I watched that too. I have spent my life watching the moment a thing begins to fail, and her smile was failing, the corners of it staying up by force, while the rest of her face tried to work out what was walking toward the help she had just mocked. Vesper reached me. She stopped close, the way she always stops a 1/2 step closer than anyone else would. She looked at me, only at me, and the muscle at the left hinge of her jaw went still. Not tight, still, stone still. The stillness I had learned over 14 months meant she was holding something so large that letting it move would be a kind of violence. Her thumb pressed once against the watch on her left wrist. The old, thin watch. 1 press, the small private thing she does, and then her hand left the watch and took mine. The room saw the ring then. the matte gold band on her left hand against my fingers, suddenly legible to everyone, suddenly meaning the only thing it has ever meant. I felt cedar and iron come into the bergamot and paper that is the air around me, the two of them mixing the way they had only ever mixed in our own rooms. And for one moment, I could not have told you which scent the room was. She did not speak to Mireille, She looked at the people who had laughed, and she said it to them, not as an answer, because it was never an answer. 2 words, level, in a voice she has never once had to raise. I noticed. The chandelier had been bright the night before. In the morning, it was just a kitchen, and the light came in flat and ordinary across the counter, and I stood in it not knowing how to be a person who had been claimed in front of 200 people. Vesper made coffee. She did it the way she does everything, without hurry, the kettle and the grinder and the same 2 cups, the watch off her wrist and set on the counter beside the sink. She always takes it off to wash her hands. I have watched her do it for 14 months. The thin antique face caught the flat light, and I looked at it instead of at her, because it was easier. I had not slept. She knew that. She did not say it. I want to say the thing I came down to say, I said. She set a cup in front of me. Okay, she said. I made you hide. The grinder had stopped. The room was very quiet. I let them think you were no one, I said. For 14 months, I let the whole city believe I was a single woman who repairs books. I let a man hold a door for me last night because he thought I'd arrived alone. I introduced you to no one. I kept you in our rooms like a thing I was ashamed of. And you are the least shameful thing I have ever. I stopped. I had not meant to get that far that fast. Vesper picked up her cup. She did not drink from it. The muscle at the left hinge of her jaw moved once, slow and held. I know, she said. That's not, I said. You're supposed to say it cost you something. It did, she said. Then say it. She put the cup down. She looked at me with the calm she has never once spent on being cruel, and she said, I let you. That was my choice too. You asked me to wait, and I am very good at waiting. And I decided a long time ago that I would rather have you hidden than have you frightened. I knew which one you were. I chose. I sat with that for a moment. It is one thing to know you have been loved patiently. It is another to be told, in a kitchen, that the patience was a decision someone made about your fear, and then carried in silence for over a year, without once asking you to be braver. I had spent the night thinking I owed her an apology. She was telling me she had never been waiting for one. You should have pushed me, I said. No, she said. You could have. I don't push, she said. You know that about me. I did. It was the second thing I had ever learned about her. The first was the watch. The second was that she would stand at the edge of a thing she wanted and let it come to her, and that this was not weakness. It was the most disciplined thing I had ever seen a person do. And last night she had crossed a marble floor and stopped doing it. For me, in front of everyone. Why last night? I said. After all this, why come? Adela sent me 3 words, she said. Veil. Now. Your name. She did not say my name. She said your name and let it sit in the room as the thing it was. I understood then that there had been no debate in her, no weighing of the privacy I had built. She had been told my name and a place, and she had put on her coat. I straightened the watch on the counter without deciding to. Squared it to the edge of the tile, the band laid flat. I felt her see me do it. Noticed, she said. It was the second time the word had been said in this story, and the first time it had been said softly. And I want to be honest that it undid something in me that the Gala had not. At the Gala, the word had been a blade laid on a table for the room to look at. Here, it was only between us. And it meant I see you doing the small thing you do when you are trying to make a chaotic morning hold still. And that is a more frightening kind of being known than any public claim. So here is the term, I said, because I had come down to set one, and I was not going to lose my courage in the warmth of her. She waited. No more hiding, I said. That's the obvious half. The city knows now. We don't unknow it. But that's the easy half. And if that were all of it, I'd just be agreeing to stop being a coward. And you'd let me, and you'd carry whatever it cost again, without a word, the way you carried the last 14 months. So that's not the term. What's the term? She said. The term is, you don't get to carry it alone anymore, I said. Any of it. When something costs you, you tell me it cost you. You don't decide quietly that you'd rather bleed than make me brave. We are done with you choosing my comfort over your own truth and calling it patience. That's the vow I should have made the first time and didn't, because I was too busy being the easy one to leave. The kitchen was very quiet again. She came around the counter. She did not touch me. The perimeter held, the way it has always held, the 8 inches of it that have been the architecture of everything between us. She stood inside arm's reach and put both hands flat on the counter, the matte gold band catching the flat light the way the watch had. And she looked at the watch I had squared to the tile, and then at me. That's a hard term, she said. I know. For both of us. I know, I said. Take it or don't. She was quiet for the length of one slow breath. Then the jaw moved, the single muscle at the left hinge, once. And this time I watched for what it would do after, the way I have watched it for 14 months. And it did not soften. Not yet. That was Act 8's to do, though I didn't know it then. It flexed and it held, and holding was its own kind of answer. Taken, she said. My phone lit on the counter between us, a name I had spent 2.5 years training myself not to feel. Mouais. A single message, the preview cut off after 4 words. I didn't know you'd... I turned the phone face down without reading the rest. Vesper saw me do that too. She didn't say noticed. She didn't need to. She picked her watch up off the tile where I had squared it, and she put it back on her left wrist, and she finished her coffee standing up. And the morning went on being ordinary, which was the most extraordinary thing it could possibly have done. The chandelier had gone quiet at the gala. The weeks after, it did not. I want to tell you about the weeks. Not the night. You have had the night. The marble, the laugh, the doors. The weeks are quieter than that, and they are where the truth of us actually lives. The night was a thing that happened to me. The weeks were a thing I had built, brick by careful brick, for 14 months before anyone in that room knew my name belonged to hers. So let me back up. Not to the gala. Further. The first week, I counted 8 inches. That is not a figure of speech. I am a conservator. I measure things that other people only feel. 8 inches was the distance she kept between us at the long work table in the salvaged library, the one she had hired the Institute to save, the reason we had met at all. She would set a damaged folio in front of me, and she would stand at my shoulder to watch my hands, and there would be 8 inches of air between her sleeve and mine, and she never once closed them. I noticed. I notice everything. It is the only thing I have ever been good at without trying. I noticed that she wore a thin antique watch on her left wrist, and that she turned it a 1/4 inch with her thumb when she was deciding whether to say a thing. I noticed she never said the thing she had decided against. I noticed that her suit was charcoal, and that in the window light, the charcoal was almost a very dark green if you looked at it the way I look at old paper, sideways, patiently, for the color underneath the color. She caught me looking once, the 4th afternoon. She did not smile. She had a way of not smiling that was warmer than other people's smiling. Just the one muscle at the left hinge of her jaw, going still. Not tight, still. The way water goes still before it is asked to hold something heavy. You are seeing the green, she said. I said yes. Most people see gray, she said. I said, I am not most people. And then I wanted to take it back because it sounded like a line, like something Morel would have said to a room. And I had spent the better part of a year teaching myself to never sound like the room. But Vesper only turned the watch a 1/4 inch with her thumb and decided against whatever she had decided against, and slid the next folio toward me across the 8 inches she would not cross. That was the first week. By the 3rd week, I had stopped measuring and started cataloging, which is worse. Measuring you can put down. Cataloging follows you home. I kept a list in my head the way I keep condition reports for a book. Foxing here, a cracked hinge there, the original sewing intact against all odds. I cataloged her the same way. Cedar and cold iron. That was what the air around her was. An old money scent. A settled one. Not the citrus the young alphas wore to be noticed. She did not need to be noticed. The room did it for her. I had watched a board of trustees reorganize itself around her once without her saying a single word. The chairs all turning a few degrees the way iron filings turn, and she had let them. And I had thought, she has never once had to raise her voice in her life. Her power is a volume she refuses to use. I added it to the list. I recall it now because of what it cost her later, to refuse that volume for 14 months on my account. But I am getting ahead. The weeks did not know yet. She asked for me by name in the 4th week. I learned this from Adela, who told me the way she told me everything, which was sideways and over reading glasses. Halloran asked the director for you specifically, Adela said. By name. She saw the Defoe spine you reset, and she said, get me the one who did this, and no one else. I said it was just a spine. Adela looked at me over the glasses for a long moment. The steel gray suit, the little brooch shaped like a folded page, and she said, Saurin, people do not say no one else about a spine. I straightened the condition report on the table, squared its corners to the edge. I do that. I align things without deciding to. A fork at dinner, a card on a counter, the world set true by a 1/4 inch. I did it then, and Adela watched me do it and did not say anything, which from Adela was its own kind of saying. The thing about a held perimeter is that it is not made of walls. It is made of the spaces you decide, over and over, not to close. There was a night in the 6th or 7th week. I have the date somewhere, in a notebook, in a hand I no longer entirely recognize as mine, when the rain came hard against the conservatory glass, and the last train was gone, and there was no one in the building but the two of us. And a folio that would not wait until morning. The paste had to be worked while it was warm. She stayed. She did not have to stay. She stayed, and she made coffee in the little kitchen off the workroom, badly, and brought me a cup, and the cup was chipped at the rim, and she had turned it so the chip faced away from my mouth, without saying she had done it. I noticed. We worked. The rain did the talking. My hand was steadying the folio, and her hand came down beside it to weight the far corner, and there were not 8 inches between our hands anymore. There were 2, maybe less. I could feel the warmth come off her wrist, off the watch, off the place where the watch band had warmed against her all day. 2 inches of warm air, and the rain, and the smell of warm paste and cedar and cold iron going not cold. And I thought, with the flat, clear honesty I only ever turn on myself, if I move my hand 1 inch, she will not move hers. I knew it the way I know a hinge is about to fail, certainly, without drama. And I did not move my hand. I want to be precise about why, because for a long time I told it to myself wrong. I told myself it was discipline. Her discipline, my discipline, 2 careful people being careful. That is the version where I come off well. It is not the true version. The true version is that I had been left 8 weeks before I ever met her by a woman who had decided I was a lovely girl and not a strategy. And I had built my whole quiet self around the certainty that the safest thing a person can be is unclaimed. You cannot be discarded from a thing you never let yourself have. 2 inches was a thing I could have, so I kept it at 2 and called it grace. She did not move her hand either, but she saw mine not move. The jaw went still, not tight. And she turned the watch a 1/4 inch with her thumb, deciding against the thing, the way she always did, except this time I understood that the thing she was deciding against was me, and that she was deciding against me for my sake, because I had not asked, and she would not take what had not been offered, not in 8 inches and not in 2. The folio dried. She took her hand back first. She always took her hand back first. It was the kindest thing about her, and the one I understood last. "Good night, Saurin," she said. I said good night. She said, "The chip faces away from you." I turned it. I said, I know. She turned the watch a quarter inch and decided against saying the rest of it, whatever the rest of it was, and went out into the rain without an umbrella. And I stood in the empty conservatory with the chipped cup going cold in my hands and understood that I was in very serious trouble of the only kind that has ever mattered. That was the perimeter. That was the heart of it. Before any of them had a word for us, 2 inches held, a cup turned without comment, a volume refused. I noticed. The chandelier had gone quiet at the gala. The weeks after, it did not. I have told you about the perimeter, the 2 inches held, the cup turned without comment, the volume she refused to use. I want to tell you now about what happened when the perimeter began to be tested. Not by her, and not by me, but by everything around us that did not know it was there. I want to back up to a Tuesday. It was a Tuesday 11 weeks into the work, which I knew because I had a calendar where I logged the condition of every spine that came through the conservatory, and the Caldwell ledgers had been entered on a Tuesday in faded violet ink. Vesper came in at 6, after the staff had gone, the way she had begun to do. She did not announce it. She came in and she stood at the long table where I worked, and she watched me lift a board that had been water damaged for 100 years, and she said nothing for a long time. Then she said, "Saurin." I said yes. She said, "You haven't eaten." I had not. I had a chipped cup of tea going cold at my elbow, which she had noticed, and a sandwich I had bought at noon and not opened, which she had also noticed, and the watch on her left wrist caught the lamp when she set a paper bag on the table beside my work, far enough from the manuscript that nothing could come to harm. She had thought about that distance. She thought about that distance every time. I said, "You didn't have to," she said. "I know." That was the whole of it. I know. 2 words that were not I noticed, but were built out of the same wood. She did not stay to watch me eat. She had learned that I could not be watched while I did a soft thing for myself, and she gave me the room. And she went and stood at the far glass wall with her hands behind her back, looking out at the river going dark, and I ate the bread she had brought me with my hands still gloved, and the perimeter held, 8 inches of table between her gift and my 100-year-old board, and I thought, this is a person who has decided something about me. I did not yet know what. The first time Mireille's name came into the conservatory, it came in on someone else's mouth. A board member named Caldwell, not Priya, an older cousin, a man who collected obligations the way I collected alls, came to inspect the progress, and he stood too close to the work and talked the whole time about people he wanted me to know he knew. And one of the names he dropped, the way a man drops a glass he means you to catch, was Mireille Devereaux. He said she was doing remarkable things with the gallery. He said she had a gift for knowing what a thing was worth. I aligned the bone folder on the table. I squared it to the edge without deciding to. I said that I was sure she did. Vesper was in the room. She was at the cabinet, returning a volume, and she did not turn around, and the only thing that changed in the whole long minute was a single muscle at the left hinge of her jaw. One slow flex, and then a stillness so complete, it was its own kind of motion. I had not yet told her about Mireille. I had not told anyone the shape of it, but she had heard the name said into my air, and she had watched my hand go to the bone folder, and she had read the whole of it off 2 inches of brass on a table. She did not ask me that night who Mireille Devereaux was to me. She is the only person who has ever been able to want to know a thing and choose not to take it. Instead, after Caldwell left, she came and stood across the table and looked at the squared folder and said, "You straightened that." I said, "I do that." She said, "I noticed." And there it was. The second time, not at a gala, not before 200 people, just across a table in a dark room over a tool I had moved without meaning to. I noticed. She made it sound like the most ordinary observation in the world, the temperature of the room, the level of the river. She made it sound like nothing. It was not nothing. She was telling me she had been keeping a record of me longer than I had been keeping one of her, and she set the record down between us as gently as she set the bread, and she did not ask for anything back. Adela found out before I told her. She came in on a Thursday with her reading glasses on the chain and the folded page brooch on her steel gray lapel, and she looked at the two of us for exactly as long as it takes to read a title page. And then she said to me in the back room, while Vesper waited out front pretending to study a shelf. "You're going to tell me you're not doing what you're obviously doing." I said I wasn't doing anything. She touched the brooch at her collar. She always touched it before she said a true thing. I had learned that about her over 15 years. And she said, "Saurin, I have watched you guard your own door so long I thought you'd forgotten it had a handle. That woman out there hasn't tried the handle once. Do you understand how rare that is? Do you understand what it costs her?" I said I hadn't asked her to keep away. Adela said, "No, but you let her think you might want her to. And she's let you." She paused, and the river light came across the room and found the silver in her hair. She said, "You keep calling it discretion, Saurin. I've started calling it hiding." I did not have an answer. I had a folder to square, except it was already square, so I had nothing to do with my hands at all. Mireille came closer the next week, and this time she did not send a name through a careless man. She sent an invitation. It came addressed to the Institute, formally, on heavy cream stock, a request that the lead conservator of the Caldwell collection attend an unveiling at the Devereux Gallery, an evening to celebrate a new acquisition, the kind of evening she was good at, the kind that photographed better than it lived. My name was not on it. The lead conservator was on it, a role, a function, a thing that could be displayed. I read it standing at the table where Vesper had set the bread, and I understood, the way you understand cold before you understand you are cold, that Mireille did not know it was me. The lead conservator was a line item to her. She had no idea the woman she had left a voicemail for, the week before the worst week, was the woman the line item named. I put the invitation face down on the table. I straightened it to the edge. I caught myself doing it, and I stopped. Vesper was across the room. She watched me put the heavy cream card face down and watched my hand go to its corner and then pull back, and she did not come to read it, and she did not ask. She has never once read a thing I turned face down. The restraint of that, I want you to understand the restraint of that, because it is the whole engine of what we were before any of them had a word for us. She wanted to know. The jaw told me she wanted to know. One flex held. And she stood at the glass with her hands behind her back and let the card stay private, because the privacy was mine. And she had decided, somewhere I had not been able to see her decide it, that what was mine would stay mine until I gave it. I said, into the dark room, "It's nothing." She said, "Okay." I said, "It's from someone I used to know." She said, "Okay." 2 okays. The echo of them. She did not turn from the glass. The river went on going dark behind her, and the watch caught no light because her hands were behind her back. And I stood at the table with a thing I could have given her and didn't, not yet. And the not yet sat between us the way 8 inches sat between us. A held thing, a chosen thing. I want to be honest about what I felt, because I have promised you honesty, and it is the only thing I have to give that is worth anything. I felt safe. And under the safe, lower, where I did not want to look, I felt the first cold edge of the truth Adela had handed me, that I was not protecting this. I was hiding inside it. And the woman at the glass, the one who had brought me bread and read me off a bone folder and never once tried the handle of my door, she was the one paying for the room I was hiding in a currency she never named. Never once. Not even with her jaw. I noticed. I was beginning, very slowly, to notice. The chandelier had gone quiet at the gala, and I had spent 14 months learning to be a person who let herself be seen. I want to tell you about the day someone walked in and asked me to prove it. She came to the Institute, not to our home, she did not know where our home was, but to the place where I work, where I keep the bone folder and the chipped cup and the long table by the north window. And she came on a Tuesday in the late afternoon, when the light is flat and honest and there is nowhere in the room to hide. I was rebacking a folio. I had the spine open and the paste warm, and the bell over the front room rang. And Teo's voice did something I had never heard it do. It went careful. And then he was in the doorway of the workroom saying, very low, "Saurin, there's someone here." And behind him, there was copper hair in the afternoon light. Mireille. She was not the woman from the gala. The woman from the gala had a smile built for cameras. This woman had no smile at all. The chignon was loose at one side, the wine red gone, a plain coat instead, and the hard bright green of her eyes had gone dull, the way a stone goes dull when you take it out of the water. I set the bone folder down. I straightened it against the edge of the table without meaning to. I always do that. She watched me do it, and something crossed her face. Recognition, I think, of a habit she had once found charming, and then found tiresome, and had forgotten she knew it all. "The Caldwells pulled out," she said. I said nothing. "They pulled out," she said again, as if I had not heard, as if hearing were the problem. "The engagement is off. Priya's family decided I was..." She stopped. "Not a strategy," she finished, and the words came out of her like something she had swallowed whole and could no longer keep down. You know, the word I used. I knew the word. I had carried it for 2.5 years. I had carried it through a first heat she timed her leaving to, through 8 weeks of silence. Through the morning, a tall woman in a charcoal suit walked into a salvaged library and asked for me by name. I knew the word better than she did. She had only said it once. I had said it to myself 1,000 times. "Why are you here?" I said. And she asked me the question she had no right to ask. She asked it the way people ask things when they have decided the answer in advance and need only to hear you confirm it so they can stop hoping. "Was it ever real?" she said. "The woman at the gala? Or did you just..." She made a small motion with her hand, a gesture that took in the room, the folio, the watch she had seen on a stranger's wrist before 200 people. "Did you just find a richer alpha?" The room was very quiet. I want to tell you that I felt nothing. That would be the version where I am already the woman I have spent 14 months becoming. The version that ends clean. But the truth is, I felt the old thing first. The pull to be easy, to be the quiet one, to make her comfortable so she would think well of me when she left. Because I had spent my whole life being the one who was easy to leave, and I had gotten so good at it that it came before thought. I felt it, and then I did not do it. That is the only part that matters. Teo had not left the doorway. He had his phone in his hand, down at his side, not raised, and I understood without looking that he would not raise it, that some things are not for the Institute's social account, that the boy had learned the difference. And in the front room, there was the small, dry sound of a brooch being touched, a folded page in steel gray, and Adela's voice even, pitched to carry just far enough. "You're all looking at the wrong woman," she said, to Murray, to the room, to me, maybe, most of all. I could have done the easy thing in a different direction too. I could have unsheathed it. I could have told Murray what Vesper was, the substance of her against the shine of Murray, the library saved against the openings attended, the band she had worn for 14 months in a silence she never once complained about. I could have made Murray small. The room was set for it. She had said it herself, 200 people ago. I did not do that either. Here is what I said. I said, "You didn't get cheated on. You want me to tell you she stole me, because then it isn't your fault." "It isn't," I said. "It was real. It is real, but you didn't lose me to her." She waited. The dull green held. "You lost me before she ever walked in," I said. "You lost me in a voicemail. And I let you," I said. And that is the part I have only just learned to say out loud. Because I was easy to leave, Murray. I made it easy. I made it easy for you the way I have made everything easy for everyone my whole life. And then I found a woman who would have made it hard, who would have stood in any doorway in the city and refused to leave. And do you know what I did with her? I made her hide. I said it to Murray, but it was not for Murray. I had been needing to say it in the open air of a room with witnesses, and she had come all this way to give me the chance. And I have never been able to decide whether to thank her for it. I made her be no one, I said, for 14 months. Because I was so afraid of what people like you would do with something that real, appraise it, photograph it, decide whether it was a strategy, that I hid the best thing I have ever had inside the same smallness you left me in. So no, you didn't lose me to a richer alpha. You lost me to my own voicemail 2.5 years late. And I almost lost her to it too. The bell over the front room rang. I did not have to turn. I knew the weight of the door, the particular economy of the step on the old boards, cedar and cold iron coming in ahead of her the way it always did, mixing with the bergamot and warm paper that is the air around me, the two scents folding together in a workroom for the first time, the way they had only ever folded at home and once, before 200 people under glass. Vesper did not cross the room to me. She did not put herself between us. She stood just inside the door, and she looked at me, only at me, never once at Mireille, and the single muscle at the left hinge of her jaw flexed and held. She did not rescue me. That is the whole of it. She is the most capable person I have ever known, the one the room reorganizes around. And she stood in the doorway and let me finish, because she understood, better than I had for 14 months, that there are some rooms a person has to cross on her own or she has not crossed them at all. The jaw held. She did not speak. She waited the way she had waited for everything. The way she had waited the first afternoon. The way she had waited 14 months. And the waiting was not patience. I had called it patience for years. Standing there with the paste going cold and Mireille's dull eyes moving from my face to hers and back, I finally understood that it had never been patience. It had been trust. She had trusted me to arrive. She had simply been willing to wait however long arriving took. Mireille looked at her. Then she looked at me. And whatever she had come to confirm, she did not get it. What she got instead was the thing she could not photograph, could not appraise, could not file under strategy. Two women in a plain workroom, one of them finally telling the truth, the other one letting her. She left without saying anything else. There was nothing left to say that would have belonged to her. I straightened the bone folder against the edge of the table. My hand was not quite steady. Vesper saw me do it, from the doorway, and she did not come closer yet, and she did not say it. But I saw her register it, the small unconscious squaring of an object, the way she always had, from the very first day. The perimeter was about to come down. I could feel it the way you feel weather change. 14 months of held inches, of 2 cents kept to separate rooms, of a ban no one was allowed to read, all of it thinning to the last membrane. Here, now, in the flat, honest afternoon light. Noticed, she said finally from the door. Just the one word low. I said, noticed. She said, come home. I said, okay. She said, okay. And the jaw flexed once more and did not yet soften. That was still ahead of us. That was for the quiet after. But it eased, the smallest fraction. The way a held breath eases when the thing it was held against has finally passed. The room had been very loud. The house was very quiet. We came home the way we always came home. Her watch on the counter first, the gold band catching the kitchen light, the door shut against a city that finally knew our names. But this was not the next morning, and it was not a reckoning. The crisis had passed in the long afternoon light, and Mireille had asked her question and gone, and I had not diminished her to win, and Vesper had let me finish. There was nothing left now between us and the truth except the small distance I had always kept. 2 inches, held for 14 months. I want to tell you about the night it came down. She set the kettle on. She did not ask me anything. She knew the way I came apart was slow, the way a spine comes apart, 1 stitch at a time, and she had never once tried to hurry the thread. I want to say something first, I said. She turned. The jaw at the left hinge went still. That stillness I had learned to read as listening, not warning. Her thumb found the watch band on her left wrist, pressed it once, the way she had pressed it before she crossed the marble toward me. I noticed. I had started, very late, to notice everything. We have said the thing already, I said. We said it in the salvaged library with the rain coming down. We have said I love you until it stopped being a sentence and started being the floor we stand on. So I am not going to say that. Okay, she said. I was never hiding you, I said. Her hand stilled on the band. I let myself believe I was protecting it. Us. I told you the bond was mine to keep quiet until it was mine and not a rebuttal to her. I made that sound like patience. You let me make it sound like patience for 14 months, and you carried the silence the whole way, and you never once told me what it cost, because telling me would have been a hand on the thread, and you don't hurry the thread. The kettle began to climb behind her. She did not move toward it. But I was not hiding you, I said again. I want to be exact because you are the most exact person I have ever loved, and you deserve the exact thing. I was hiding from how much I had. That is the whole of it. Marae left me because I was easy to leave, and I told myself that was her cruelty. And some of it was, but the part I have never said out loud is that I made myself small enough to leave. I was good at it. And then you came and you would not let me be small. You saw the constellation on my cheek and the way I square a fork without knowing. You saw all of it. And you stayed in the doorway and waited. And it was more than I knew how to be trusted with. So I put 2 inches between us, and I called it discretion. Adela calls it hiding. She is right. I was not protecting you from the city. I was protecting myself from the size of what you were going to be in my life. The room was very quiet. I know, she said. You knew that? I said. I noticed, she said. And there it was. The line, the 2 words, the same ones from the first apology I made for nothing. The same ones she had said to 200 people who laughed, said now so low it barely cleared the counter between us. The jaw at the left hinge moved once. I waited for it to set, the way it always set, held against the thing it was held against. It did not set. It softened. I had been cataloging that muscle for 2.5 years, still as stone at the gala, flexed and held through the crisis, eased a fraction at the door but never undone. And I watched it, for the first and only time, let go. Whatever it had been bracing all those months, it stopped bracing. I think that is the thing I will keep longest. Not the marble, not the doors, not the gold band made legible in front of the people who had said charity admissions. This, the one muscle she could not control, finally not needing to. Come here, she said. I crossed the 2 inches. There was nothing on the other side of them but her. She lifted her hand to my jaw, her fingers along the hinge of it the way she had read my edges for 2.5 years, and she rested her forehead against mine and let it stay. The kettle singing now and neither of us moving to answer it. Then she kissed me once, unhurried, the way she did everything. And the 2 scents I had named separately for so long, her cedar and iron, my bergamot and paper, were no longer 2 things I could tell apart in the small warm dark between us. Mine, she said, against the corner of my mouth. Not a claim made for a room. A claim made for me. Yours, I said. She reached past me and lifted the kettle off the heat, because she is who she is. And the singing stopped, and the quiet that came after was not the held quiet of the perimeter. It was the other kind, the kind you live inside. The band on her left hand was warm now where it rested at my jaw. 14 months invisible, 1 night legible, and from here on out only this, ordinary and warm, and ours. I had spent so long keeping 2 inches that I had forgotten there was a country on the other side of them, and that she had been standing in it the whole time, in the doorway, waiting, never once trying the handle, holding a thread she would not hurry. I noticed. Finally, all the way through, I noticed. The chandelier was sold that winter, not ours, the Aldous Vale's. They auctioned the great glass hall to a foundation, and the foundation rang the institute to ask who might conserve a building made mostly of light. Vesper bid for it before they finished the sentence. She did not tell me. She let me read it in the morning paper over coffee, the cup warm in my hands. And she watched my face the way she watches the corner of a page she is deciding whether to turn. We gave it to the city in both our names. That was 9 months after the night the room laughed. I want to tell you what 9 months does. It makes a marriage ordinary, which is the thing I had been most afraid of, and now cannot live without. The gold band on her left hand is no longer a secret legible only to the people who knew where to look. It is just her ring, The one she sets on the counter beside her watch every night. The two of them together where I can square them when she isn't looking. She lets me. She has always let me. Teo is behind a real camera now. The Institute hired him, and then a film archive hired him away from us. And he sends Vesper footage of restored libraries with a note that says for the collection and never asks for anything. The phone he kept almost raising. He raises it on purpose now, and only at things worth keeping. Adela retired properly in the spring. At the small dinner we held for her, she unpinned the folded page brooch from her own steel gray lapel and pinned it to mine, and her hands did not shake. And she said the thing she always says, which is nothing, which is the brooch. I wear it to work. I straighten it without noticing, I am told. Marae is a sentence. I will give her one, because she gave me a whole life by leaving and never knew it. She sold the gallery and moved to a city I have already forgotten the name of. I deleted her text unread the morning after I told her the truth, and I have not thought of her since except to notice occasionally how little I notice. The slate gray dress is folded in tissue at the back of the closet. I did not give it away. It was the dress I disappeared in and then was found in, and a thing can be both. This is the last ordinary image, and then I am done. We were in the kitchen. The library deed was on the table, signed, both our names, and I reached across without thinking and aligned the heavy paper square to the table's edge. A habit she has watched me keep for years, the smallest tell I have. Her thumb pressed once to her watch. Her jaw flexed at the left hinge, one slow flex, the way it does when she is holding something back. And then, for the first time in all the years I have cataloged it, it softened. She said it the way she said it the day we met, and at the glass, and in the quiet after. Softest of all this time. 2 words, level, claimed, sealed, mine, forever. I noticed.